Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Conscious Grief series about creativity. Today, we are joined by Matt Jacobson, who is the co-founder of Life Books. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Tara, for having me. Excited to share my story and a bit more about life books. I know we're probably 14,000 miles away. I'm in San Diego. You're in London. It's amazing to connect with you.
Yeah, well, I always love to connect with people from the US and especially California, since I spent some time living there. And I know that I do have listeners, from the US, so they will be very interested to hear what you have to say. And this little mini series that I'm doing is focusing on people who have experienced grief and loss, and through that have come up with creative ideas. So perhaps you can begin by sharing about the passing of your father and how it led you to start Life Books.
Yeah. Um, so this was about 2020, during the pandemic, my current wife and I, partner then, we were studying abroad in Spain, and we saw countries were falling before us, and we didn't know whether or not we were going to be able to stay in Europe. And before I left abroad, my dad was previously diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and I didn't know, as it was in remission for 2 years, that the cancer had come back. But that time was saying, if you never go, you'll never go. He made sure I left, and it was really important for him that I left. And only 3 weeks into the trip, though we had done a lot of traveling in those 3 weeks, but I got the call by my oldest brother to come home. And it was late in the night, and I'm not actually quite sure what time it was in the States, but I knew that I wasn't being called to come home because, my dad had just been admitted, but things were bad. And by the time, a train to a train to a plane, we got back to LAX. I was greeted by my siblings at the airport terminal, and we're all fairly different in ages. So it was that kind of crazy moment to see them all together. And it was an unspoken confirmation that my dad had passed. And shortly after, because my dad was a business owner, he owned a mattress store. I was thrown into the mattress store like 3 days after his burial. So it was, got home, next day memorial, next day funeral, and then I'm at the mattress store. And I went from just being a delivery driver working on my finance degree to all of a sudden running the whole family business. And there was a lot of pressure that weighed on my shoulders now because my oldest sibling had to go back to Arizona and work on his career. He has, his family and his kids, and I had to hold down, the lease, our mortgage, all the bills. All of a sudden, I'm in my dad's shoes, and it really hit me as I'm there, just dealing with grief. Because it's the mattress store, you have customers who come in who've already bought a bed, and they come back in, they're like, where's the old man? And this is literally like a day after he passes. Um, and you're just shell shocked with the question. You don't know what to say. Do you lie? You tell the truth? Many times I told the truth, and they walked out because of just the discomfort of the situation and it being so fresh. Then I went back to line, but then you feel like it's disrespect of his life. And it was one night, I'm coming home, mattresses, though it's sales, it's still retail, and not everyone loves their mattress. So you deal with, just the storms of retail. And after a pretty stormy day, I'm driving home and I'm thinking, like, my dad never came home and complained. I never knew how tough it was at the mattress store by himself every day, aside from major holidays. He was there. And to think that, my nephew and niece, how are they going to know this great man and his sacrifices? My grandparents passed before me, and with that, I really only know them by a story, an occupation. I don't know them in the regard that I know my father, and to think that my dad's memory, their grandfather's memory, is going to be reduced to just an occupation, a story, felt like a profound, that, the cliche, you die once when in the physical and die second when you're last spoken, but it's so true. And to think that that was going to happen in only a generation, and then in two, completely absent. um i I remember driving home and I kept telling myself, I'm going to write a story, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write a book. I want to write his story. But as I'm driving home, just uttering this, hysterically crying, I thought, I'm not a great writer. Like, I can't do this by myself. Um, I've never been known for my great writing works, like, never. And it was the thought that I could use, okay, well, maybe my family, my mom, my brother, my sister, my other brother, my aunt and uncle, could they join me and we could create a storybook for my dad, a legacy book for my dad. And as I looked online, I couldn't find anything out there that would handle multi authors in this celebratory manner. And I began working on Life Books, which has now become an online platform where family members come together and they upload photos, stories, family recipes, traditions, video, audio, everything that they can think of, through a collaborative group effort to create a timeless memorial book, a book that would be, in a sense, treasured and shared for generations within the family, preserving their loved one's legacy. And it took a long time to get to the point that we're at. As I was taking over the family mattress store, I was still finishing my degree and dealing with grief and the absence of my dad. And the hardest part was just that, my background was not in the tech space and I wasn't in book printing. I had very little understanding of how it would even work. But the why, the purpose that kept me going is loss is, if not, it is emotionally the hardest thing you'll ever go through. But the thought of absence became even worse. And I didn't want my dad's story to become absent. And I know that purpose and why is really the fuel to our day to day. Is why do we go to work? Why do we live our life? Why am I creating life books? And it's because of the thought of absence. I don't want there to be a day where my son and their son don't know how we got to where we are. And I want them to look to the book for strength, look to it for wisdom, look to it for laughter, look to it for joy, knowing, what your father and their father grew up with. So my hope with Life Books, and it's currently coming to fruition, is that I was going to get my dad's book filled with stories between my family members and photos and video, all into one place that I could actually hold and carry with me wherever I go in the world. And I've almost wanted to quit many times. There's been tons of hurdles, but it's all been very rewarding. And remembering the why and the purpose has kept me fueled to this point. And I'm sure I would say to the end, but there is no end. There's the next mountain and the next mountain to climb. But I look back now and I'm too far up to go down, so I'm just gonna keep going. And I'm really excited to share it all with you today.
Well, thank you so much for explaining it so well to us. I think it would be wonderful to actually see a copy of the book if that would be possible.
Yeah. Um, I have my dad's book is in production right now. So
Okay.
we finished the beta in late January, and the books are actually, fingers crossed, being shipped out this week, if not next. Um, Production was uh, a major mountain to climb when it came to the book. And before I show you, I kind of would like to share when it comes to book printing, 99% of books that go into print that aren't, 500 books, 1,000 books at a time, they're just printed with a glued binding. And when you have a book and it only has glue holding the pages together, especially if you live where there's inclement weather, hot, cold, different seasons, humidities, that glue becomes undone. And it was really important to me to find a print shop that would print what's called a section sewn binding. So the binding's actually sewn together, the pages are sewn together. Those are the books that last 200-300 years. The books that last 20 years are glued binding books. And I think it would be awful if my kids end up, ripping a page of my dad's book out. So it took a long time. In fact, it took 13 months, over 110 manufacturers I called. Nobody wanted to print with life books because we weren't going to ask the families to print 50 books at a time to make it a decent price. It was one book minimum. So, how could that be done on a machine that costs $500,000? They're not going to print one book at a time. So, after literally just calling relentlessly, probably almost every print shop in the States and many in Canada as well, I found a shop that would work with us because they believed in our mission. The book itself, and I can show you here for all the people watching. If you're not listening, it comes, or if you're not watching but listening, it comes in an enclosure box to keep it safe. And the book is an 8.5 by 11 section sewn hardbound. And we wanted to design it to be like a coffee table book, one that would just always be there present in the family, nothing that would be, tossed in a cardboard box, of course, but something that would preserve and be a sit down read at night and held and treasured. The cover of the book, we have a celebration of life. We did try to test it with two other families, about 30 members, whether or not to put the cover of our loved ones on the front, and it became too difficult to pick up, unfortunately. And that's why we went with on the back cover, you have your loved one featured, as well as two or three quotes of them. In the book itself, for those watching, you can see how it lays open and the binding is secured as it's sewn together. The pages are sewn together. And Lifebooks, how Lifebooks is organized is we go, our book engine takes unlimited amount of text and photos, and we can do all the scrapbooking for you. And with that, you can also upload video and audio. So if there's a story, and maybe in the iPhone era, we all have videos on our phone. You can attach a video, and that'll appear as a QR code within the story. So you can go from stories, and then any photos not used within the stories go into the photo gallery, and then any video or audio that's not used within the story go into the video and audio gallery. So there'll be a section of QR codes with who it was submitted by and context around the QR, and it just enhances the book's timelessness. But it took a long time to get this to get into production, and I do wish I was holding my dad's book, but I do know that it is coming soon, and I'm just very excited because it's been nearly 5 years, and finally I'll have his book in my hands, which has always been the goal. And now the new mountain to climb is bringing this to the wider audience and sharing this as a new legacy tool for other families as it was for mine.
Wow, it's absolutely stunning, Matt. And thank you for sharing about the time that it took to find the right printer. That just really goes to show, your dedication to making a product of real lasting quality, like you say, that will go through generations. And that's, a real testament to the person and the co-founder that you are of this company.
Thank you, Tara. Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I when I had worked in finance, I worked in financial sales, cold calling, registered investment advisors, or RIAs, and they terrible, terrible business. I don't miss it at all. But I always ask myself, why am I doing this? Why am I calling? Like, I don't love this at all. And I come to find I use the skills I learned from that to call these print shops, to work deals with them, and it really translated over. So I've always known quickly, like, God has had a plan to have me steward this through, and I'm going to use the trials and all the battles that I've had to gone through before to use that as strengths to kind of take on the ceaseless mountains that I had seen in developing and creating life books.
Mhm. Have you ever, this is just a thought that I'm having, but have you ever thought about developing it as a website so that anybody could read the life book?
By anybody, um, like my personal life book.
Well, I'm just thinking personally here because in the pandemic, my father died in 1990. So that's a long time ago. And in the pandemic, the first one, I had the feeling really that I wanted to reach out to uh, his old friends or people that he worked with. My father also ran a business, family business. So we share that in common. And I knew that his life touched so many people. And that's why I really wanted to hear stories about him. Because a lot of the time we always think our grief is, the people that die. We just think a lot about our own grief, our own loss, and how it impacted the direct family. But actually, our parents impacted so many people's lives. And so what I did is I asked whomever would be well happy to have a call like this, a Zoom call, and I started to write these conversations and post them on a blog of mine. And it's interesting because just in the last few weeks, I had an email from somebody who had discovered one of the blogs I'd written. And he said, my father used to work for your father. And I think he would be really interested to share some stories with you. And he asked, is this still your email address? And I said, yes. And then his father messaged me and told me some very sweet stories about what my father had done for him. So it just made me think, like, yeah, that there are people far and wide that, your father's legacy, my father's legacy, keep all these years later, he's still being thought about and about by people I don't know.
The I don't know if I'd. I mean, well, Lifebooks is a platform on its own where you invite the family members and friends to join, and that's where they share the stories. But to put something public where others would read maybe a snippet and then add their tribute as a general guest of the individual's life book. I don't I don't have any ambitions for that. The goal with life books is that we do take it to print. The unfortunate part about like online memoriams is that the revisit rate falls off very fast. Online obituaries, online memorial pages, they hardly get revisited, and that's that's why the focus is on the tangible artifact. I think there's a certain nostalgic factor to the physical book, but I do think it would be interesting if at the mattress store, because I get people that have stories of my dad all the time, I hear, if they would if they would have participated and shared. And there's like an at-work mattress book, um, an at-work life book from my dad. That would be very cool. I like the idea. I conceptually I don't know how I'd execute it with the amount, because there's not too far and many enough to make a book per se, or I don't know if they'd be willing to write an actual story rather than just share a tale with me. But no, that it's their living tribute. They're, you live indefinitely, as they say, for those that you've had an impact on. And I am very sure, given my dad's life and that he's had an impact on many. Otherwise, I don't think the mattress store would still be around because we get so many of his return customers. But I like the idea and concept. I don't know how I execute it. Again, to the mattress store, sometimes people get really, they're in there to lay on a bed. They get really taken back when there's a conversation about loss.
Yeah.
So sometimes they would leave, and that would suck. Um, but is that what you were
Well,
thinking? Like,
yeah, and I'm sorry to sort of throw you an idea that's
oh,
not
it's okay. I
the
have so
framework.
many sticky notes in front of me. I love ideas. You see my head turning. It's more just thinking into how it would work. Ideas are how life books became what it is. In its shell form, it's nothing what it is now, and it's from the help of grief therapists, grief doulas, grief coaches, hospice workers, RNs, that we've gotten the product to be what it is. With there's, a nudge engine, there's emotional sensitivity to the prompts and questions, there's an assistant button, there's a lot of features that have been vetted thoroughly through the professionals. And my background, finance and mattresses, I book production is a new skill I've learned, and developing an online platform with my partner, I wanted to lean on the expertise of those who have been holding the hands of the family for a long time, for decades even. I think of those areas of occupation as the boots on the ground, the ones that are actually there for the family. In many Western cultures, death is not is oftentimes hardly, there's not really true celebrations, and there's not really memorable keepsakes. Flowers wither away in a week or two. Trinkets can only pass down so far with no story tied to them. And the funeral homes, um, they meant some of them, and I say, and they know who they are. They're amazing. They're outstanding. They're typically small, oftentimes women led, and they're fantastic. But the majority of them are owned and operated by a conglomerate of a company, and that company is owned by some online ticker symbol. And these corporations have really treated the funeral industry as a bottom line type of business, and they don't have ongoing support. Even when I worked with some funeral directors, that they just said outright, like, we don't really do anything afterwards. We have this brochure, we have that, and but there's nothing that we can do because, well, one, given they do have, a new family or two families or however many every week, and they have to go with each one. But on the other end, it doesn't benefit them.
Mhm.
So, the brand new casket, the $700 flowers, the $80 ribbon, like those things benefit them. But a life book, and they're more invested in the bottom line and increasing their profits. And a lot of them don't have control in what they can offer because they've signed these contracts away that relinquish their rights to their website, their payroll, and everything that currently holds a 21st century business intact. And you have a third, fourth generation funeral home that has kind of signed a deal that they can't walk back. So it's very important to lean towards those who are the boots on the ground, who understand what families are going through and what they're looking for, and however I can learn from them is very helpful. So I'm happy to hear your ideas, Tara.
And I was thinking how it sounds like you're one of several children. How many
Yeah,
brothers and sisters do you have?
I have two brothers and one sister.
Okay. So the I can imagine the process of you all coming together to talk about these stories that you wanted to share in the book. Maybe other family members as well, your mum. Um, I imagine that must have been a very healing experience in a sense.
I, I think of my mom, who at the beginning is crying because she's having trouble getting started. And with our Lifebooks engine, a we do have a contributing period. So it's 3 months the family's given to write and draft their loved one's story. And we do that because if we leave it open forever, nobody will finish. And that's just the nature, human nature. And towards the end of our contributing period for the beta group, my mom's calling me and she goes from crying to, hey, Maddie, can you leave it open for one more day? I got one more story I want to write and a couple photos I want to upload. Just a complete shift in her tone and just how she felt about the process. And it very much so was a healing experience. Though my sister, she was very young when my dad passed, she wasn't ready to write, and that's okay. Um, Life books, when we go to print, um, the platform does close, but on an anniversary basis, we reach out and reconnect with all the users that were invited and ask them if they'd like to make a volume two, because perhaps someone needed more time or others would like to actually see the physical book to know what they're doing and they need a bit more. Grief is individually for everyone, it's a different experience. And like, for my sister's sake, I wasn't going to push her to write stories she wasn't ready to share. But maybe in 2 or 3 years' time, she's going to want to have her imprint on, her father's book as well. So I would say it's very important for the more people that are involved enrich the book, but there is a certain um, sensitivity aspect that you want to maintain because not everyone is ready to share their stories, and you want to give everyone their time because it is, again, one of the, if not, it is the hardest thing that you'll ever go through is loss.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah. And for you personally, you've had a lot of responsibility put on your shoulders and you decided to take on this project as well. Um, but do you feel like the creativity has kind of sort of helped you move through your grief in some respect? Or, I mean, it sounds like you educated yourself a lot. You had this, you sound like a curious person and you met up with a lot of experts to help you create this book.
The creativity aspect, absolutely. I think life books, I don't believe in closure. That's just my personal belief. Like, I don't think closure from loss is truly real. But of course, I do I do believe in peace, and life books has brought peace to my heart. It has brought a sense of understanding that my dad, though he's gone, his memory will remain and he will be known in the family for generations to come. That has brought me peace. And the expressive part of capturing his quirkiness, his wittiness, his strengths through stories, whether it was a tale at the mattress store or times at the mountains, or maybe, that frisbee football game that we played. There's been so much that I've been able to share that I know as my nephew, niece, and in time future children read, they'll know who their grandfather was. And that is so important to me. And I feel a sense of peace in my heart that after 5 years' time, my dad's book is actually going into print. And we're going to have this memento, this keepsake in the family. And I, again, I mean, I'll never, my dad's loss will always hurt my heart in the sense that he's not here. But, and especially because I'm young, I'm going to spend more years without him than with him. Um, but the thought that he's going to be forgotten is extinguished. And that is so huge. So the creative aspect has really helped propel that. Without the creativity part, I don't think I would have been able to make life books come to fruition. Um, it's taken a lot of late nights when your left brain falls asleep and your right brain starts to speak. A lot of late nights.
Well, that's the creativity, I guess, sparking as well. So. Well, Matt, I feel like what you just said really, culminates the interview in such a beautiful way that you feel like you've got peace in your heart from, this creative endeavor that you are now going to be sharing with the world. So perhaps you'd like to just tell the listeners where they can find life books and maybe like how long it takes to get a delivery of one or any other things that you think are useful for people to hear.
Yeah. So, and thank you, Tara. So Life Books we're launching. I'm not quite sure when this podcast or this interview rather would be released, but our launch is May 5th, and family members will have until August 5th to finish their loved one's book. Uh, don't be dissuaded if you start in June, as most beta users, including my family, we all wrote in the last month more than ever. And we'll be printing on a quarterly basis, taking our loved ones' books to print. And if you want to join or look into more information, you can visit lifebooks.io. .com is on sale for 55,000 US. If you'd like to go buy it for me, please. Um, no, I would. That's crazy. They saw our website and they increased the price of .com. But lifebooks.io as well with our Instagram, lifebooks.io. And feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions or if you're a professional that would like to share this as a legacy project. We have a professional program to help just spread the awareness throughout the community and gain support. And it's a 3 month contributing process, but if your family doesn't finish in 3 months, we allow an extension to the next print date. So there's no trouble if something comes up that happens. And it takes from the print date roughly 4 weeks to get your loved one's book. And in terms of the UK listeners, there's no VAT on books. We've come to learn. So there's no extra tax, and the euro is a little bit stronger than the dollar right now. So it'll be even more of a discount for all the European listeners. Um, and that's Life Books. Well, thank you, Tara, for having me on. I'm glad I got to share my story and a bit about that physical book and then the creative itself. And for anyone that's hesitant in getting started writing, but interested, just remember the why, the purpose. Loss is terrible, but absence is worse. And Life Books extinguishes absence. It'll keep your loved one's memory treasured forever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Matt. It's really wonderful to meet you and to understand more about what you're doing. And I wish you all the very, very best with this. And I look forward to keeping in touch.
Thanks, Tara. Me as well.
Thanks so much for listening. Bye.